welcome to the first ever crossover episode here at Diamond Badge and JB Silhouettes podcast. And today we have such an exciting show for all of you that we are going to be, all of us are chatting together. This is Gia Doxy, David Benari, and me, Mariana Barbará-Olsen, the host of the Diamond Badge podcast. And you guys are the host of what podcast?
Silhouettes JB podcast.
Yes. And what is your podcast about?
It's all about Cats, the musical. No, I'm just kidding. It's all about Jersey Boys. That's where the JB comes in. And Silhouettes, of course, is one of the Four Seasons big hits, and it's used all over Jersey Boys, and they sing it, the band plays it in the underscoring, and we've been doing it we just celebrated 4 years, actually, 4-year anniversary of the podcast.
Yes, on June 20th, 2020, we premiered the podcast, and it's very in the same essence of Mariana's podcast, where the title of our show is very niche because of the underscoring and all of the very little Easter eggs that are inserted into the musical. Yes. And much like Mariana, it's all about finding those really fun details. So I'm so happy that we're here to talk with her.
Exactly, and I'm sure you've said this before, but where does Diamond Badge come from?
Yeah, so the Diamond, for those of you who are not, for those of you who are first joining us for the first time, my podcast talks all things Pokemon Live. And if you guys are, unless you guys are probably humongous Pokemon fanatics, Pokemon Live was a stage production that toured the United States in the year 2000 in the last few months of the big cultural phenomenon called Pokemania. And this was, I believe, a first big production for the company for kids, because they had never put together a stage production about Pokemon, because that was the time when there was a lot of kids shows that were touring the United States. And Norman Grossfeld, the producer of 4Kids, thought, we have a big hit TV show, #1 movies, #1 card game, #1 video games in the country. The one medium they haven't done was a stage production. So that's why they developed the production of Pokemon Live, which I am wearing a t-shirt. Now, Diamond Badge, the funny thing is that a lot of things in this musical were a first. They had their first non-canonical Pokemon that they created. They had, I believe, their first non-canonical badge, which is actually the name, the inspiration for the name of my podcast, the Diamond Badge Podcast, because the Diamond Badge was a very rare badge that all the trainers were battling for in the secret gym, which was, spoiler alert, run by the leader of Team Rocket, Giovanni. And they said the Diamond Badge was super rare, it's one of a kind, and it can only be won once. And I think it kind of alludes to my podcast, because Pokemon Live is considered super rare, a holy grail of lost media. And you could say it's a little jewel in this big box of Pokemon Easter eggs throughout all of the Pokemon craze. So that's kind of a bit of an inspiration. Andrew Rannells, he got his start in Pokemon Live playing the role of James from Team Rocket. Mm-hmm. And there's this one interview when he's talking about it with Stephen Colbert, and he pulls out this picture of him and the actress who played Jessie, Lauren Kling.
And that is the first of the many actors who were in Pokemon Live and later in Jersey Boys somehow, some way, which is so much fun.
Or before, rather. It was... Right. No, you're right. But I think, right. I'm an idiot. When Pokemon Live was what, 2000?
2000, yes.
2001. And then, of course, Jersey Boys debuted on Broadway.
Oh, what a night. Ce soir là.
That's right.
Because one in Paris, 2000. So, yeah. So that set the stage, literally, for Jersey Boys to come out on Broadway.
I'm sorry. I was mixing up the timeline.
No, it's okay.
No, it's fine. But that's so cool how you mentioned the opening number of Jersey Boys in Paris of 2000, and the same time that Pokemon Live premiered in the year 2000.
It's crazy. And so a part of the Pokemon universe, Sebastian Arcelus, who was a voice actor, of course, for 4Kids and for different Pokemon episodes.
Yep. And other 4Kids properties like Shaman King, Tokyo Mew Mew. I think he did Ultimate Muscle. He voiced, there was this big crossover movie of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles where the 2003 Turtles met the 1987 Turtles, and he voiced 1987 Raphael.
Wow.
That's
Yes.
Wow.
That's amazing. So I saw him. So I was living in Newark, New Jersey. Just a Sebastian Arcellus story, really cool. And then like a little
Ooh.
joke. So I was living in Newark, New Jersey. I was going to Rutgers. It was about a year before I met Gia. Because I this was in 2018, like in like March, April 2018. And I'm going to New York to see a couple shows, and I get onto the train and I'm like looking in the car, like where should I sit? And I was gonna sit in the front of the car, but I was like, no, let's just sit in the back. I don't know, something was pulling me to the back. Then I see Sebastian Arcellus sitting on the train in a hat and like his computer, and I'm like, no, I can't waste this opportunity. So I go sit down in next to him, in front of him. Like there was 2 seats here and 2 seats here, so I sit down in front of him. I didn't want to disturb him. He was writing. He was like, on his computer. But then he put his computer down. He was drinking some water. I was like, this is my chance. So, Sebastian, I'm so sorry. I don't want to bother you. I just want to say I'm a huge fan of your work. And he's very nice too. And he was like, oh, where do you know me from? Madam Secretary or House of Cards? And I was like, neither. Jersey Boys. But so then me and Gia were talking about it today. What if I had said neither Pokemon? He would have, because he loved me after I said Jersey Boys, and we talked for the rest of the ride. But if I had said Pokemon, he'd be like, "What are you watching? How old are you again?" No. So that was just a really cool Sebastian Arcellus story.
Yes, and that led to an idea potentially for social media for any crossovers like this. Like, have you seen those Taylor Swift memes where it's like it's 2 pictures of her like on stage during the Eras tour, and it's like, I said, well, I love the Tortured Poets department, and then but switch, but I always skip like the alchemy or I skip down bad. But in this case, it would be like,
I love
we love Sebastian Arcellus. What do you know it from?
I know, but we
like
skip
that,
Madam Secretary, we skip House
yes.
of Cards, Jersey Boys,
Jersey Boys
baby.
and Pokemon. Like that's it.
And
That's it.
I have not seen those memes, but I think I'm gonna look at them now.
So
If we could take it a step further for our Jersey Boys fans who might not know anything about Pokemon, Mariana, could you explain like the general plot of it and what a Pokemon is?
Okay, so like a Pokemon, so you have this little ball, little Pokeball. So what the kids have to do is they need to go out and they need to capture and train these little creatures called the Pokemon, pocket monsters as it was in Japan.
Pocket Monsters, right?
Pocket monsters, Pokemon, they shortened it. And so they need to go out and capture them and then train them. And then along the way of their journey, they go to gyms and they battle Pokemon, and then they receive these badges. And then I believe the more badges they have, or the more likely they will be able to attend or take part in like these world champion tournaments, I believe. I'm not like a humongous expert on like the little nooks and crannies of like the gym leaders or the gym battles or the badges or like the points of the Pokemon cards, because like you have to reach like a certain level to evolve to this Pokemon. Like I'm not like a humongous expert on that, but I know like pretty much a little bit of like the lore of Pokemon and like the basics of it. And then also some Pokemon evolve into like more advanced, more powerful stages. Like for instance, I'll use the example Pikachu. Pikachu had a pre-evolved form called Pichu, and then I think after certain like battles or certain attacks that a Pichu acclaims or achieves, the Pichu evolves into Pikachu. Pikachu, I believe, is when exposed to like a certain stone, like the Thunderstone, he evolves into Raichu. Raichu is an extremely powerful electric Pokemon. But yeah, most of them it's about like the most of the themes of Pokemon is friendship. It's about, I believe, integrity. It's also about, persistence and working hard and never giving up.
Pokemon are definitely modeled after dogs. Like there's like you can train them, like, and you have to be respectful and kind and nice to them. Like I always think of dogs and puppies. I think of Pokemon.
I
like
agree.
animals in general. Yeah.
It's so funny, actually funny that you mentioned my dog. So when I was in the middle, so one of my big guests that I got to interview for my podcast was the singer of the Pokemon theme song himself, Jason Page. Yes. And my dog comes in, he starts barking, and I'm like, I'm sorry, my dog interrupted our interview. And it's so cute because I went to an anime festival a few weeks ago, and I brought my dog this little bandana.
Oh.
And he was wearing it. And Jason jokes, is that an RK9? Because RK9 is like a kind of dog Pokemon.
In the new Pokemon games, the Pokemon Sword, I said Pokemon. Pokemon Sword and Shield, there's an electric puppy. His name is
Yamper.
Yamper. Remember, you loved
Oh,
Yamper.
yes.
And because I was watching a playthrough of Pokemon Sword and Shield.
So yeah, you guys are one of many people that inspired me to want to do this show, and for that I'm so
Thank
grateful.
you.
Yes, and you are killing it. since you
Seriously.
started. Yes.
Your guests have been incredible.
Yes, and you've been booked and blessed, like one after another. You're ready to go, and we know it's been such an exciting journey for you. So we're so happy. Well, I thought of something like so with Team Rocket.
Yes.
Right. So they're the
They're the
evil.
villains,
They're the
yeah.
villains. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
And Giovanni is the lead of that.
He's the boss of Team Rocket.
He's the boss. Okay.
He's trying to achieve world domination. Like they're trying to capture all the Pokemon and train them to take over the world. If I recall correctly, that was their
They
motto.
always use the worst Pokemon too. Like the weakest. It's always like such a joke. Like they try to take over
not
the world.
Mewtwo. Not Mewtwo.
Well,
Mewtwo is
but like they always use like Slowpokes. Like there's a whole plot line in Pokemon Gold and Silver where there's like a Slowpoke well, whereas like a bunch of Slowpoke is a Pokemon. It's called a Slowpoke, and I don't remember what they were even using them for. But it's like and like whenever you battle someone from Team Rocket or whatever insert evil organization here, they always use the worst Pokemon. It's like it's comical.
Can I make
Yes, please. I like this
a
one.
comparison that is I don't mean for this to be negative in any way, but it seems to me because if Giovanni is the boss, like that it's an Italian thing. Right? So why is the Bob boss and what's the so you have an Italian boss of the villain, and Slowpoke is exactly what like an Italian guy would say, like, hey, all right, come on, Slowpoke, let's go. So that's Jim Giancarlo to me.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Giovanni.
Yeah.
I think because I think that was the name that they came up for the character, and because the Japanese names are very different from the American names, but I don't know where that origin came from. I think because Giovanni, he's like the boss, he's the big guy that they all have to answer to, and in the earlier episodes they kind of like blurred his face out with the shadow because he was considered like mysterious.
Like the Godfather.
Yeah.
Kind of the Godfather, kind of mysterious kind of figure, I believe. And it wasn't until like when Ash went to Vermilion City, and that was, I believe, that episode was the first introduction ever to Mewtwo, because Mewtwo was like in his armor, like before the first movie. Because in the first movie, he broke out of the lab, and that's when that whole plot line of him wanting to then eliminate all humans and repopulate the earth with Pokemon, I believe, if I recall correctly from the first movie. And then, well, spoiler alert, we'll get to more into that, but Mewtwo makes an appearance in Pokemon Live. So
It does.
yeah. And actually, speaking of, so one of the cool tidbits about Pokemon Live is that they sold some very rare merchandise at the show. And like I mentioned earlier, they created Norman Grossfeld and the team that worked on Pokemon Live, the writers, created the first non-canonical Pokemon ever called, and I have the card right here, Mecha Mewtwo. This was inspired by, I believe, Mewtwo, because it gives like a little description down here that this was created by Giovanni, and this Pokemon has the power to learn the Pokemon attacks thrown at him and then throw it back at the Pokemon, but with like twice as much power.
Is it Mecha or Mega?
Mecha Mewtwo.
Mecha.
Yeah, it's right here. And also, this is the picture of the diamond badge. This is what it looked like in the show. So this is like the badge that, again, that said that people are battling this Pokemon to get this badge, which is there was like only one badge, one way to win it. Which, fun fact, in the intro of the show, they played like this little commercial of Giovanni in his office where he's like, attention Pokemon trainers, announcing the all new Diamond Badge. And then he talks about the Diamond Badge and he's like, the one way to win it, check out my website, blah blah blah, and download the map. It's really, really interesting to see like how they wanted to have him remain like mysterious. And like you said, like that mob boss, you know, which is really cool. And you want to know something really funny? When Pokemon Go, I think it was like this happened like a few years, I think, into Pokemon Go. So they released, I think, the battles or the gym battle where you could battle Mewtwo in his uniform, his Team Rocket gear. And when people started catching Mewtwo, they started naming it Mecha Mewtwo because you can name Pokemon when you catch
Right?
them.
When you catch
That's
it.
funny.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think this happened and it was so hysterical. I was like,
That
oh,
must
that's
that must
Pokemon
mean that
Live.
people that must mean that more people than we might have thought knew about Pokemon Live, because the only reason they could have known Mecha Mewtwo is because of the show.
In the last couple of years, there's been so many like hunts for lost tapes of lost media or like unaired pilots, lost video games or movies, or like lost Broadway shows or off-Broadway shows. And I was like, you know, seeing what you guys were doing, talking about what went in working on behind the scenes of the shows and talking to people that were there. And I was like, you know what? I want to do that. I want to know more about Pokemon Live because I'm sure that there's probably a lot of stories that people don't know about the show and about the going into making of it, because there is a 23-minute documentary that was uploaded by the stage manager back in 2012, and they interviewed the cast, they interviewed the crew, they showed footage of them rehearsing at Radio City and teching in Trenton, New Jersey, and then the opening night. But I'm like, I still have more questions. And then, believe it or not, 2 years ago, a documentary came out by these other two YouTubers who interviewed two actors from the show, Patrick Frankfurt, who played Professor Oak, and Jesse Nager, who played one of the ensemble members, who also has funny connection because in 2013 he did the show Motown the Musical with, guess who, Dominic Nolfi, who was in the
Nolfi,
ensemble.
Charles Brown.
Yep.
Yeah, Charles Brown, and they
Now,
do a project and Broadway Boys. So yeah, it's so weird seeing all this connection.
so was it like crazy music?
No, actually, a lot of the songs of Pokemon Live were taken from the To Be a Master album, which was like the album that came out in 1999 amidst the popularity of Pokemon. There were a couple of songs that were brand new that were written for the show, and some of them were also re-recorded and put on the soundtrack that came out during the Johto Journeys called Totally Pokemon. So some of the songs were new, some of them were not.
So it's like a jukebox musical mix with original music.
Yeah, you could say that.
When I saw the Jimmy Buffett musical, Escape to Margaritaville, it was a jukebox musical, but there were like two original songs too. It was weird.
Yeah. And the same thing with the Who's Tommy. The same thing with the Who's Tommy.
Well, are there original songs written specifically for Tommy, or it's just the concept album?
I think there was one. It was the duet between Captain and Mrs. Walker. I believe My Own Eyes. I think that was the
I didn't know that. Yeah. Well, so you said there were a couple of original songs written for Pokemon Live, but yeah, so it's like a jukebox musical. That's pretty cool.
Yes, that is so weird. I never made these connections until now that I'm talking with you guys.
I'm telling you, yeah.
That's so interesting. Well, if we could dive into this listing off more of the connections. So the crossovers. So we have Don Nolfi, who played Ash, Andrew Rannells, who was James, who also played Bob Gaudio in Jersey Boys. Roy Max Kaplan, he did
voiceover for Pokemon.
He
wasn't
did
live, right?
He did voiceover for Pokemon, but that was after 4Kids had lost the rights to Pokemon, and that was now with the Pokemon Company. And also, funny story, the voice actress for Serena, if those of you don't know, that's the girl that has a crush on Ash. And it's been like subject to people debating. They're like, no, because another funny thing about Pokemon Live is that it teased that Ash and Misty were a thing in Pokemon Live.
So Misty is in. So we haven't met. So we were just watching the pilot. So Misty, she is a Pokemon gym trainer. So we mentioned gyms earlier. So I think gyms, I think it's more like it's like a tournament, I think, for the
Yes,
viewers.
like a
Like a
battle.
Pokemon tournament battle, a battle tournament.
Yeah.
That like it's like there's different like command centrals, like each town or city has a gym. That's like a
Yes,
tournament that you can, it's like an open entry. You can go
Yeah.
whenever you want.
Okay.
and they specify what type of Pokemon that they battle. Like Misty is a water
Water type, yeah.
water type
Which is
gym
funny,
leader.
like
Brock is the ground and
type,
earth and
ground,
rock type.
exactly.
Giovanni, I think, was the dark Pokemon. I think
Dark and psychic. Dark and
Maybe.
psychic, maybe.
No, psychic was Sabrina.
Sabrina was psychic, right?
Sabrina. I think the bug Pokemon. I don't remember who the bug Pokemon. I know that in Johto Journeys, Bugsy was one. There was a ghost Pokemon trainer in the Johto Journeys named Morty, who is voiced by Andrew.
Oh, there you go. Wow.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know Morty was voiced by Andrew Rannells.
Wow.
Yes, he is.
If we could take a pause for a second. So I feel like, well, I know, so we have, so you have dark, you have water, you have
Fire,
Fire,
electric.
okay.
Electric.
So there's
Lieutenant
are
Surge.
there more than
Lieutenant Surge
four?
was
No,
the
yeah, so
electric Pokemon.
there's a bunch of types.
Okay.
And
Yes.
there's been more types introduced as the series has
Well,
gone on.
Dang it. Because
I
I was going to
know.
say if there were four, it'd be like the
Four
seasons.
seasons.
Yeah.
Well,
Start with the four.
exactly. Well,
That's funny.
What's funny is, so each new region or each new series, there's what's called starter Pokemon. So starter
Yes.
Pokemon are the first Pokemon that you receive as a beginning Pokemon trainer. And it's
Yep.
usually one of three types: fire, grass, or water.
Okay.
Yes.
So if there was a fourth, it would have been perfect.
It would have been electric because that's how we got Pikachu.
Because of Pikachu,
Yes.
exactly.
Well, okay, in the pot, I
In the
think that
pilot,
works.
there's 4
In the pilot,
types.
there's four. Done.
4 types, 4
Yeah.
seasons.
It's so
still-
funny.
I
We're
still
making all these connections. It's
She's
hysterical.
the queen of it. I still like the 4 felons.
Perfect.
Felon.
Well, Fallon.
I still like the 4 felons.
There you go. Well, Giovanni, we'll get him.
He's the felon.
He's
the felon. This is funny.
Very
So Rory,
Mhm.
he was Norm Waxman and
In Jersey Boys.
and Tommy DeVito.
Right.
And
Yep.
then of course Sebastian Arcelus was Bob. Then he played
Yes.
Vincent and Rafe and other people in different properties, and it's just so. It's how
Who are the casting agents?
Right.
Okay.
That's what I want to know. Like, how
Okay, so they actually so the casting directors of the show, his name is Dave Clemens. He casted a lot of like Frank Wildhorn musicals, and also the assistant casting director is Rachel Hoffman. She's casted like a lot of big Broadway shows. I think one that I saw her in the casting process was Beetlejuice, I believe. You know, going back to what we were discussing about like the details about that through our podcasts, about learning about the little details that many people might not know about the shows that they love, and also a show probably they didn't really get to see. I'm really curious to know like what really inspired you to want to start this podcast, and what about Jersey Boys enticed you to become the big fans that you are today?
Great question.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I mean, both of our stories are very similar.
Yeah. And we both saw the show for the first time on the national tour. So also to preface, Davina and I are both from South Florida.
All three of us
are all South Florida kids, which I like. I really do. Like, of course, I'm biased saying this, but I really think there's something to us South Florida kids who are extra into pop culture compared to. It's true.
Yeah.
Well, I know
Everyone here in New
saying,
York
like,
is so jaded.
well, no, but it's
Kids.
we're so excited. It literally, like, we are all consumed by media. Like, and of course every kid is, but I think really there was something about our generation, and because we're all 28 years old ish, right, Mariana?
Yeah, and we're 2000s kids. Like we grew up with Nickelodeon, with Disney Channel, with Cartoon Network, with all that stuff.
Exactly.
That's like really cool, right?
Yes, and there was a magic to that time. And like, so with Pokemon Live in 2000, Jersey Boys came out in 2005. but we didn't see it until 2012 in January, a week apart. We didn't know each other, and we met in New York.
Yeah, I didn't even know about Pokemon Live until it was 2007. And by then they had finished the tour in 2001. But when I was getting back into the Pokemon anime, my family was renting movies at Blockbuster, and then I started to go online and do some research about Pokemon. And that's when I fell into that little Wikipedia rabbit hole about Pokemon Live. So
we didn't even know about Pokemon Live until 2023.
Until you told us.
You told us.
What?
Yeah. I had seen pictures of Andrew Rannells as James, and I think maybe like you refreshed it. I think I had seen stuff about it like willy-nilly here and there, you know, but you like refreshed it for us.
Yeah, well, this is all new for me. I really was not like the only exposure I had to Pokemon was my cousin would play his cards, and then jump to Pokemon Go. Like that was really it. So I missed the anime lore growing up because I was all consumed in Disney Channel and Nickelodeon, and then like this and then movies. So that was my main thing. But with Jersey Boys, so I'm Italian Catholic, and I grew up on 50s to 80s music. That was just me.
But so did your mom not let you listen to top 40s?
No, of course we did.
So my mom did not even let me listen to top 40s. I was relegated. Why do I have to be relegated to this? No, but I was relegated to 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Right. I was forced to, not that I had a problem with it. I didn't like listening to, I eventually realized I didn't really love listening to top 40s. So that's when I realized that I really, really did love the music. So that's where our stories differ.
Right. I had everything.
She had everything.
But I really, but that's all nothing. Like my parents would play. Right. Yeah. So in the car, it was all what my parents wanted, and then for me, then I would dive into like current stuff. But of course, I always went back to that time period as well because it is just the best. And but of course, the second Tommy DeVito comes on stage and he starts talking to you, he sounded just like my dad, and it was very relatable. And I was just in awe because it really was like watching Goodfellas on stage. And of course, I loved it. So that's what stuck for me. And I remember it was my best friend and her mom took me to see it because my family, I'm the only theater person. Like no one really cares to go see anything. So I'm so thankful that they took me. And we were up in the balcony, and I couldn't see anything.
Same.
Yeah.
But you still remember more than I do.
I really remember just the beginning and the music, and like as the music played, I was like, oh, well, Walk Like a Man. Oh, I know that from Mrs. Doubtfire, or like all of these songs that I knew. I finally pieced it together. I didn't know that it was this one band. So
and Jared Spector talks about that too in one of his backstage interviews when he was still on the tour before he went to Broadway.
Right. Yep.
Oh, Jared Spector was on the tour.
That's where he started. He started on the first national. He was the first Frankie. One of the first Frankie alternates on the tour.
Oh, okay.
One of the first, and then he was in San Francisco. He was in the Chicago company. And he went to Broadway.
He is
wow. And actually I wanted to tell you.
I was playing King George in Hamilton.
Yeah, I know. That's crazy. And Andrew played King George in Hamilton.
Andrew played King George. Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm surprised like Brian Darcy James wasn't in
funny that you should mention about Pokemon Live and talking about Jersey Boys. So I actually found out about Jersey Boys because of Pokemon Live.
Because of all the connections.
Because, well, this was one specific connection. And actually, if you guys don't mind, I want to share you guys a photo that allows me to show you how I knew about this.
Yes, please. Do you have it on your computer? You can share your screen.
I have it on my computer. Okay, this is a photo of Dominic Nolfi.
Wow.
In his dressing room. Because I came across this interview in I believe it was my freshman year of high school. When I found the promo of Jersey Boys, it was him, Jared, Matt Bogart, and I think it was Ryan
Hesse.
Yes, this was like after he had replaced Christian, And the Broadway World or Broadway.com came into his dressing room and they asked him to name 5 of his favorite things. And if you look closely at number 3, it's a figurine of Ash and Pikachu on his dressing room table. So it was this picture that confirmed that he was who he was.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, I did not know this. So they are still working on Broadway. That's amazing.
Wow. Yeah. And then that started your rabbit hole into learning about Broadway, right?
And about Jersey Boys too, because I remember watching the B-roll and I was like so into the music, but also seeing like some of the clips, like the December 1963 scene where like the guys and the girls are like half naked and Dom is like in the theater. I'm like, ooh, Ash Ketchum grew up.
Mariana.
So spicy.
My buddy's gonna hear this and gonna be like, what are you saying, Mariana?
So funny.
But that's what's incredible, and I think that's a huge reason why we wanted to start this podcast too, is because you want to be able to inspire people to learn about Broadway more and just to have something to get excited about. And the fact that happened for you, through Pokemon Live, and then we found these connections to Jersey Boys, it's just so much fun. Like, it's great to have a lore to get sucked into.
100.
Yeah, definitely. So it's been really cool to see like all these connections about the Jersey Boys and Broadway, and seeing that a lot of the people that were involved in the show have gone on to do such amazing things. Like I saw, in addition to Louis and Tony, I interviewed also Suzanne, who also, like I said, has connections to the Broadway and Jersey Boys. I also interviewed Jesse Nager, who also has done a lot of Broadway shows. One of them, mostly known as Motown the Musical, which he did with both Charles and Dom. And I got to chat with him a little bit about his time on Pokemon Live. And a really interesting story he told me was that, and also he told this to the documentary that both him and Patrick Frankfurt were a part of, was that apparently during one of the dance numbers, like he was in the ensemble, and so some of the ensemble members got to dress up as Team Rocket grunts. And there was like a big dance number when Giovanni comes out and sings his big song, It Will All Be Mine. And there's like a scene, because the recordings are available online, but there's like some scenes where they do like some somersaults, and then there's tumbling, and there's like these humongous, like these big twists and dances and kicks in the air. I'm like, wow, these dancers are incredible, because they got a lot of great triple threat dancers in the ensemble. But Jesse apparently said that during one of the shows at Radio City, he, I think, made a wrong turn and landed his knee on like one of the parts of the stage where there's like wooden lining of the stage, and he like tore his I forgot what part, but he tore his knee. And it was bad. He had to go, like, I think, to a doctor to get it checked out in their first city, Cleveland. And then they brought in, as like, I think, an emergency replacement or emergency cover, was this other actor named Adam Fleming, who also was in the original cast of Hairspray, and he did Wicked as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's so cool. Like, oh, like I was like, wow. So these people. So learning more about Pokemon Live was then finding out, oh, so they brought in new cast members, because most of the cast is just labeled on Wikipedia, but they don't talk about like, oh, they brought in this cover after this actor left, or this actor got injured, and blah 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 blah.
Exactly.
So,
yes.
That's why we do this.
Well,
that's why we do this.
David is the encyclopedia, and not just for Jersey Boys, but for everything. And now, really, both of you, because that was something for me growing up. Well, at least in high school, when I was so into musical theater.
Yeah,
I never thought to do that, because it felt to me like, well, looking back, it really is like sports.
It really is. It really is.
Like fantasy football, you have to know everyone. And it's the same thing for Broadway. And I had no idea, even to this day, I still get tongue tied. I'm not sure I don't know what cast he was in. I don't know, but David knows everyone. So but that's what's so important. And it's great where I think we really want to hone in the opportunity to be that resource for people. Yeah. And same with you, Mariana, like the fact that you're interviewing literally everybody, that you're able like you can document all of it and people can look back and find them.
Yeah. I'm also interviewing people that grew up during that show, because I've also interviewed two of my new friends. One of them is Anthony, who is a Pokemon merchandise collector. He saw the show at Radio City when he was a kid, and he was like telling me all the story about like how he went to see it at Radio City, how he remembers the merchandise that they sold in the booths. Like, for instance, the shirt. One big story is the Pokeball light stick, which you see back here. And then I have the flashlight. This was the bottom half of the flashlight that they sold at the show. And he said one of the biggest core memories of that was seeing all of these light up in the audience.
Yes,
which also is hysterical because many years ago, Michael Slade, who wrote the show, who sadly is also passed away, he remembered when there's a blackout number in the show with Misty singing her song, how much she loves Ash, if you guys know Misty's song. And there's like a big Pokemon puppet ballet behind her, which is like all the water Pokemon. Like there's Vaporeon, there's Mew, there's Butterfree, there's Horsea. It's really, really pretty.
That's so cute.
But what happened was that the kids, they were little children in the audience. And what they did was that they unscrewed the top of the lightsaber and they started shining it, and they just killed the blackout effect.
Oh.
and then Michael and Louis look at each other like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? And then they turn to this person at Radio City, and the person's like, yes, this is amazing. Do you know how much money we're making off of this? And then they look at each other like, oh, that's what this was about. As Mel Brooks said, merchandising from Spaceballs.
Of course. Oh, that's so fun.
But yeah, one of my guests I interviewed was Heidi Waymuller-Gaspin, who played Misty in the show, and she remembers having to deal with that. Yeah, it was so funny.
What a get.
Yeah, it was
incredible.
I know. And she also told me, and another guest of mine, and my inaugural guest for the show was Daniel Dockery, who wrote like an entire book about Pokemania. And he had a chance to interview both Nolfi and the guy who played Giovanni, Darren Dunstan. And for those of people who don't know, Darren Dunstan is also a huge name in the voiceover industry and with 4Kids, because he is the voice of Maximilian Pegasus from Yu-Gi-Oh! Yes. And
Maximilian Pegasus. Oh, Yugi, I'm going to send you into the Shadow
Realm. Your turn, Yugi boy. You know
Your turn, Yugi boy.
Yes.
I knew you would, Yugi boy. My turn, Yugi boy.
What's also funny, Sebastian Arcelus voiced Rex Raptor too.
Wow.
Yeah, and Andrew voiced Noah Kaiba. After Pokemon Live closed, Norman Grossfeld actually approached some of the cast members to come in and audition for some of their projects. One of the projects that they had just acquired at the time was Yu-Gi-Oh! So they asked Darren Dunstan, who played Giovanni in this show, to come in and audition, and one thing led to another, and now he's the voice of Max. He voiced Max.
Voice.
So yeah, but anyway, but yeah, both Dom and Darren were interviewed by Daniel Dockery, who was the author, and they told them some great stories. And there's the two stories that stuck out to me, and also to Daniel. There was one time, and Heidi reiterated this in her interview, that one time a little child walked upon the stage during a performance.
Wow.
And in the middle of the dance number, Dom had to stay in character as Ash and like take him back down to his family.
So cute.
It was adorable.
Can you
Heidi
tell?
was like, yeah,
Can you tell the Nolfi Pikachu story? No,
wait, let me tell this one and then I'll tell that one.
Okay, the microphone. That's a good
Well, okay, and then another story, and also has to deal with Nolfi, because I also interviewed Patrick Frankfurt, who played Professor Oak in the show, who's also really great buddies with both Dom and Darren. Was that this was not a debate. It was a fiasco, because there was a disagreement between the Japanese executives of Nintendo and with the American company of 4Kids. I think it also involved Louis, Tony, Norman, that they wanted to they wanted to finalize how Ash's hair was gonna look. So they were debating between either a wig or extensions. And then in the end, they went with extensions. So according to Daniel's book, and then also what Patrick said in his interview, that they had to send Dominic to get these hairs taped into his head, not his head, his hair, and he had like this really bad mullet.
Yes.
The Radio City performance. And it looked more like Steve Perry or 80s John Stamos. Like bad.
So funny.
And he was like complaining like how super itchy and uncomfortable it was. And then I think and then after the Radio City performance, they went to Cleveland, which was their first stop on the tour. And Dom, I think, was taking a shower, and all of a sudden the hair started falling out. The extension started falling out in chunks. And if you guys know Dom, he's like, he takes no BS. He's like, he makes up his mind. He's like, you know what? I'm done. I'm not going to deal with this anymore. So I think he called either the stage manager or Gina Barker, who I also interviewed, and she was the wardrobe lady who helped them put on their wigs, put their costumes on, and I had a wonderful time speaking with her. He called one of them and he's like, get the wig ready, because this ain't happening no more.
Leave it to Dom.
Yeah.
Wow. Did they all transfer to the tour cast, or were there any?
Yes, they all transferred to the tour cast. I think it was like towards the end, like in January. And Patrick revealed this to me, that apparently the guy who played Dexter, Sinclair Mitchell, went on to do another show. And so they brought in a guy to come in and replace him as Dexter. And also Jesse left because he went back to school.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's another things that people don't know.
That's it.
Which I didn't even know about this. So yeah, it was really cool getting to like hear all those stories. Now this one is my most favorite one, and I've told you guys this too. And it's so funny. And actually Patrick kind of corrected me in the interview, because apparently it wasn't Jennifer. So they had three little people on the show. That playing the Pokemon, like in the big mascot costumes. Jennifer Risser played Pikachu, Kathy Roche played Meowth, and Leah Smith played Psyduck and Jigglypuff, and she also understudied both Pikachu and Meowth. So
and they all used pre-recorded stuff.
Pre-recorded tracks from Iko Otani, who voiced Pikachu, Michael Hagney, who voiced Psyduck, and Rachel Lillis, who played Jigglypuff. And of course, the late Maddie Blaustein, who was the voice of Meowth at the time, had pre-recorded dialogue.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's so funny because like I go back when I watch the Pokemon live recordings, I'm like, dang, Maddie Blaustein just nailed that role so well. And I miss Maddie as Meowth so much. But there was one little blooper that happened on stage during the tour, where it was during the Battle of Giovanni. So towards the end, Ash and Pikachu make it to the gym. They battle Giovanni and Mecha Mewtwo. And in the show, they used pyrotechnics to make the Pikachu sparks go off. Like the teching process was crazy. We'll get more into that later. But so all of a sudden, there's one scene, the pyrotechnic goes off. It starts smelling like smoke. And Patrick told me that I think some of the sparks landed on the Pikachu costume. And all of a sudden, Dom leans in a little too close to the Pikachu head. Then his microphone picks up what she said. And it was so funny. Apparently, that performance, it was not Jennifer. It was Leah, the understudy. And Leah is from Texas, and she had a very thick Southern accent. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Pikachu says, and based on what Jesse said in the documentary, everyone heard it. You hear Pikachu say, like, am I on fire? I smell smoke.
Oh,
wow.
my God.
That was so funny. I'll finish off that anecdote was the way how Dom reacted. He was like, no, Pikachu, you're not on fire. that has been like one of my favorite stories about Pokemon Live. One of the coolest things of also learning was all the celebrities that came to the show.
Wow.
Yeah, so Patrick told me that Satoshi Tajiri, who was the creator of Pokemon, went to the opening night party at Radio City Music Hall.
Oh, I would hope so.
That's
great. Yeah.
Yeah, it was because Nintendo was kind of kept abreast a little bit, but it's really interesting to see, and also because I'm a big Star Wars fan, as you can see from my Ahsoka Tano earrings and my Star Wars Funko Pops. One of the craziest twists in the show was they hinted that both Ash's mom and Giovanni had a thing back then, and the possibility that Giovanni could be Ash's dad.
I love that theory.
Well, what's interesting?
Classic Star Wars twist.
I don't know how canonical, how canon that is, because
it wasn't.
Well, because Giovanni is Blue's is
no, Silver's
dad.
Yes.
Which you don't even get to know unless you hit like a special, like in Pokemon Soul Silver and Heart Gold, those are like the remakes of Gold and Silver.
Yeah.
You can trigger a cut scene and a cut battle. But only if you have a special Pokemon in your team who's at a certain level. And that's when you learn that Giovanni is one of Ash's rivals' fathers.
Wow. Yeah. Or is it Red? I think because the character's name is Red.
Red, yeah.
Yeah.
So could it be possible that he's also his father?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Well, you could, yeah. He could have been a, you know.
Okay, so continuing the rivalry, but also him, yeah.
I don't know. For your audience that doesn't know, like I'm on the autism spectrum. I work with children on the autism spectrum as a registered behavioral technician, and it's a lot to balance out. And sometimes I have these doubts. Like I feel like, is anybody even listening? Is anybody even appreciative of what I'm doing? Does anybody even want to talk to me? But, you know, after realizing, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to pick my head up. I've got these expectations. I can't meet all of them, but I'm going to continue moving forward. And I think that
someone's going to find your podcast, just like the way you found all these newspaper articles and all these. And this is how we feel too. Someone's going to find our shows and it's going to set them down a rabbit hole to do amazing things.
Yes. And we're sure it's already started, Mariana, really. Like, and plus you just started your show like 2 months ago?
About three months ago.
Yeah, 3 months ago.
Because it was 3 months ago on World Theater Day. I announced the show.
Right.
Yeah, and it's been an absolute inspiration. I want to ask you guys, because a lot of stuff has stood out to me doing the show, but what from doing Silhouettes has stood out to you the most? Like what experiences have stood out the most to you doing your podcast?
I think the relationships of the cast. I think what we say, it's like what we have found, that our show has been turned into some sort of green room for all the actors to come and hang out, you know, like especially when we do our panels and when we bring people on together, like it's become like almost like a industry magazine for people.
Yeah, that's what we like to say, because because at least on our Instagram, what happened was, like, the people who ended up following us were more and more cast members and crew members, and so that's where the industry magazine comes in, where it's like, oh my God, I want to catch up with this guy, I want to hear what he's up to, and that's how they find out, and then they want to come on too and share their story. It's, oh well, please tell like so and so this story, or please tell them that I miss them, and it's just so cool. We've become that funnel. And also the Jersey Boys family. So as like it's the main, one of the main lines in the show is family is everything, and you feel that with all of the cast members and the crew and the creative team, and everyone wants to talk and share. And I think that's what's great too. Like it's never like pulling teeth in an interview to try to like find out about things. It's just let them run, and it's a great time. And yeah, so that's really cool. And like we were saying with your doubt, like, does anyone want to talk to me? Like they do want to talk to you. And it's the same thing with us. Like they people are reaching out to us to come on, which is wild.
And the more and more that we do this, the more and more people have heard of us.
And tell you, like, people are gonna like find you on the street, and they're gonna be like, "Oh my God, you can do the podcast!" Like, and that's happened with us in New York and in LA.
Aw.
It's just so cool, and you get to meet other fans like us, like just like how all three of us met, and it's making friends, which is huge, and people appreciate the work, and I think the main thing is before you start a podcast, you're afraid to meet your heroes, right? They always say don't meet your heroes, but we have the complete opposite view.
Thank
If
God.
you,
We're very lucky.
yes, if you do your homework and if you reach out and you ask really thoughtful questions and like you have a genuine like interest in just in learning about them as a person, they can become your friends, like your actual friends.
Oh my God. I have had so much support. I have had a lot of support from Heidi, Suzanne, Gina Barker, who was the wardrobe lady. I've interacted also as well still with Tony and Patrick, and they've been just really, really nice guys. Speaking of like people finding me, I was on a live, I was doing, Darren Dunstan was doing an Instagram live signing, and I popped in, I said hi, and he recorded, I think, an episode of 4Kids Flashback Talkback where they listened to voice memos because I had sent a voice memo. And I think that they read my question because that was the question I mentioned to them that I had just launched the podcast. And I think they're going to read it. I don't know. But we'll see. So he knows about the podcast.
Yes.
And Tom too. And I think some of the other cast members, I think I also spoke to the music supervisor, John Leffler, on LinkedIn. And I think I might be giving him a call next week. So I'm getting people. I'm also talking to people that were in Pokemania, that grew up in Pokemania, even though they don't know about the show. They didn't really know a lot about the show, but we're still talking, and I think it's great. And also, I'm going to Florida SuperCon next month, the anime festival I recently went to in Miami Beach, and the vendors were the nicest people, and it was so cool to see like them put their fandom together, the way how this young lady who made these earrings, she 3D printed these Ahsoka Tano earrings, was just absolutely insane. It's so cool to watch like the fandom. And Gia, you introduced me to the OG Mary Delgado on the phone call. It was so cool. We tell this really quick story. So Jennifer Nemo Morales came to support you that night.
She did, yeah.
And you
second time she came, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So those of you who don't know, she was in the original cast. She played Mary Delgado. And I remember one of the episodes with the ladies, and she recited the famous VLLY line. And I had done it to you guys. I had showed it to you guys in one of our meetings. And I did a Mary Delgado impression in front of her. And it was so surreal.
On FaceTime, yes.
How special is that?
It is crazy. I want to, if you don't mind, can I show our audience a little taste of Mary Delgado? Oh my God. I hope my mom doesn't hear this because she's going to be so mad. She's going to, okay. So Mary Delgado, what does she sound like? No, VLLY. Why? Because Y is a bullshit letter. It doesn't know what it is. Is it a vowel? Is it a consonant? Plus, the Italian, you got to end in a vowel. Delgado, Castelluccio, pizza, and Valley with an I. This is who I am. You don't like it? You can go fuck yourself.
Bravissima, bellissima.
And I did that in front of Jen. She's like, "Where did you learn that?" And I said, "I learned it from you." So that was so surreal.
And the sweetest moment. Yes, I had to make sure you talked to her on FaceTime. It was so cool.
And that was so sweet. And it
was midnight her time, or maybe even a little later.
It was midnight at my time, and you guys were at 9 o'clock, and it was so amazing. And then when I told her about the podcast and Pokemon Live and how Andrew and Dom did it, she's like, "What? I did not know that Dom did that." It was so cute. And I promise, a last story about how, because 2021 rolls by, was the first time I ever saw the Doo-Wop Project. And a few months prior, I bought this rare keychain on eBay, which apparently was, and I found out that they gave these to the cast members to put on their suitcase when they were traveling. Yeah, apparently Suzanne and Patrick and Heidi, I believe, told me about this. Wow. So my mom and I drive to Naples because we were going to see the Doo-Wop Project there. And I snuck this in my purse. I didn't exactly tell my mom that Dom had done Pokemon Live. And when we get to the theater and outside we're having a snack, I kind of told her about that. Yeah, the guy who is in there, he did Pokemon Live. He played Ash in the show. And so I was like thinking, I was like, oh my God, should I bring this up? Should I not? And if I do bring it up, does he remember? And if he does remember, does he even want to talk about it? So then the show comes to an end and they're in the lobby and they're signing. So I walk up to the table and Dom's the first guy I see. And I was like really nervous. I was shaking. So then I kind of like started off like, oh, I love music theater. And I heard you guys were coming and I was so excited. And I said, I got a little bit more excited when I found out that you were coming. And I pointed to Dom and he looks at me. He's like, me? Why me? And then I kind of like told like a little story about how I love music theater because I'm on, for our audience that doesn't know, I'm on the autism spectrum and I had a lot of challenges growing up as a young girl. And I was really terrified, creeped out by music theater because it's a very overstimulating environment. But learning about Pokemon Live, it kind of introduced me to the concept of music theater and introduced me of wanting to like go to shows and get involved in theater and choir. So I kind of like told him a little bit about that, but then I dropped the hint. I was like, one of my favorite cartoons growing up as a child was a show called Pokémon. And all of a sudden, because he was wearing a mask at the time, all of a sudden his eyes light up. And I don't know if it was Russell or John, Michael Dias, that just looked at him and looked at me and went, and he's like, what? And I said, yeah, you see where I'm going? And he's like, I think so. He's like, you know about Pokemon Live? He's like, did you see it? And I was like, no, but I listened to the soundtrack when I was little. And he's like, oh, you mean the cast album we did? And I told him, I was like, yeah, because it was so cool getting to learn, because I loved Pokemon when I was little, and then seeing that it got brought to the stage, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. And then kind of like wanting to get me want to involved in music theater and wanting to sing more. And when I got involved in theater and started singing, I started to interact more with people. I started to talk more, something I couldn't do when I was little. And so I'm so forever grateful that I got to do theater, and it's kind of like helped me come out of the shell, because if you guys met me in high school, I would be like super introverted. So I said to him, I was like, so even though I didn't get to see Pokemon Live, knowing about that show kind of in a way helped me become who I was today. And I just wanted to say thanks for being part of that. And he was like, oh my God, you are so sweet. So that was such a really cool interaction that I had with him, and how much that him and all those cast members and everyone who I've interviewed on my podcast have really meant a lot to me and helped me a lot as a young girl. And this podcast is kind of like my way of showing my appreciation for them.
Paying it forward.
Just the way how you guys are showing your appreciation through your podcast with Jersey Boys, how much that has touched your life.
100%.
It's a celebration. That's the point.
Celebrate good times. Come on.
Celebrating good times.
But Mariana, that's seriously such an incredible story, and that's what it's all about. That's what theater's for.
Yeah. And when I saw him again in Aventura, he was like, oh my God, hey. So it was so nice to see them again, because I hadn't seen them in 3 years. So that was pretty cool.
Right?
Yeah. And when I pulled this out, he was like, wow, I've never seen that before. It was so funny.
Why did
Maybe you got his.
I don't know. No, I bought this from someone in England.
Yeah, why did
maybe they took it from Dom,
and maybe they swiped
and
it
then
off.
you got it.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where they.
No, we're just kidding. We're just kidding. We're just kidding.
I know. It's so hysterical. I wanted to ask you guys, because there's been so many IPs being adapted to the stage, like The Outsiders, The Notebook, Beetlejuice, Legally Blonde, Spamalot. Do you think that because Pokemon is so popular, could it be adapted to the stage again?
Yeah.
Again?
I do.
Yeah.
Like, would it, like a revival or like a brand new?
Maybe like a brand new, not like a kid's production, but like a proper Broadway musical.
But so do you mean like bringing Pokemon Live to Broadway or doing a brand new show?
Either
Like
one.
writing a brand new one.
Either one.
I
think so.
maybe they should take Aladdin out and put Pokemon. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It would have to be marketed really well.
Yeah.
Just because there's nothing too relevant with Pokemon right now. Like there's nothing new to add to the mix, right?
And I
don't
feel
think so.
most of the people, I don't know how many young kids are playing Pokemon.
But do it for
A lot.
But
yeah.
But
I think off Broadway could work.
Maybe.
Yeah, I agree with
Or
that.
another
Do
touring
it at New
show.
World Stages. Do it at New World Stages.
Or another touring
I
show.
would go smaller. I would, yeah.
Smaller.
Like even somewhere like maybe like downtown Manhattan, try out something there, and then see if the cult following comes.
It needs to
and
be at a
then-
small theater that they can pack every night,
Yeah.
because it's just and not charge really expensive tickets. But if it's like
True.
if the official production company is going to be producing it, like there's no way they're not going to be charging up the butt for tickets,
Of
because
course.
that's like the biggest problem with commercial theater these days.
Oh
is
yeah.
the amount of money it takes. And not to go too political with theater, but like
No.
a lot of the non-union and the CETA, what's called CETA productions, the short engagement touring agreement productions,
Right.
which are technically union production, but sometimes are one-nighters, two-nighters, less than a week,
Yeah.
and treating, the actors not having ideal travel conditions, ideal living conditions, still charging audiences Broadway prices. It's not sustainable. This thing is not sustainable, and that's why, something like have you heard of that musical Lempica? Did you hear
Yeah,
that?
yeah, with Eden Espinosa.
No, yeah, it didn't last 2 months.
Right.
Oh.
And Harmony didn't last.
Harmony also,
Yeah.
yeah, which it
Which
did so well downtown.
Beautiful.
Did so well downtown. Opened up
Yeah.
Broadway.
and it crashed.
And
Yeah.
and fun fact, Stuart Zagnit was in the show, and he's the voice of Professor Oak.
Who did Stuart Zagnit play in? Was he in Harmony?
Yes, he was. He was in Harmony. He did Carol Interchange. He's done
Okay.
what has he done? He's done Little Shop of Horrors. He
I've
did
heard of him.
Seussical. He's done like
Wow.
yeah.
That musical
What a
was. That's
He
it.
was the mayor of Whoville.
So Seussical was in 2001.
No, 2000.
Yeah.
The same
Same
time
year?
when
Seussical
Pokemon Live came
was-
out.
Oh wow.
Seussical was the second Broadway show I ever saw. I saw Lion King and Seussical on the same trip.
Aw. I saw it once.
Yeah. He hates once. Yeah.
Don't hate it. It just wasn't what I wanted.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
you know,
Aw.
I didn't know.
But
But Kristen Milotti,
Yeah.
that was
That was
amazing
really
watching her. But yeah.
Okay.
anyway, I think this is a good place to wrap up.
Yeah.
To kind of
Yeah.
stop here. Everyone, please go listen to the Diamond Badge Pokemon Live podcast everywhere you can listen to podcasts.
Yes. And follow
Yeah.
follow on
on
Instagram.
Instagram, social media, and check us out. So let's JB Podcast. Check us out on
Yes.
media, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. No more Google Podcasts is done.
Mm.
Oh
There's-
no.
They're done. They're fucking done.
I'm only doing Spotify, but I have considered uploading some of my interviews to YouTube.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
I'm
So
considering doing that. I just need to know like all the logistics.
stay
out of it.
tuned. Stay tuned for video interviews with Mariana and her
Yes.
guests, and everyone.
And thank you for catching on the balls with us.
Catch them all. Catch
And,
them all.
Gotta catch them all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pokemon. And Salud.
And thank you so much for wanting to do this crossover. It was so much fun.
A crossover of all crossovers.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. No, this is the most unexpected.
This is
Episode, I
the
think.
crossover you didn't know you wanted or needed.
Yep, that's true. Yeah.
Totally.
We're revolutionaries over here.
That's
what
it.
a kid.
Definitely.